What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Zero Lab. We are getting back into our podcast here. Hopefully, we can bring this to you weekly. Schedules permitting, lots of travel with competing in regionals and jobs and all that good stuff. But we're hoping to get back into the weekly podcast here. We have some really cool topics to discuss today, but I am here with Max. Austin could not join us today, and our face cams aren't working, but we'll get all that squared away in the next one. How is it going, Max?
Tom, it's great to be back on the pod talking about some Pokemon. I think there's a lot of exciting stuff coming up, so I'm really looking forward to the second half of the season.
Yeah, the first half of the season went really well for you already. I believe you got a top 16, you got stipend for EOIC, and you're well on your way to your Worlds invite this year.
Yeah, it's feeling pretty good. Normally, I've never started off a season very strongly before. I'm usually a second half comeback type of gamer. It was kind of funny with the rule changes to how stipend works this year. Um, I was able to sneak in off of the play point tiebreaker. So kind of funny to see that come into effect the
Mm-hmm.
season they implemented.
Yeah, that was pretty crazy. And then you had a sick top 16 finish in Louisville, right, with Snorlax?
I was
Or
at
sorry,
top 16 Baltimore
Baltimore.
with Snorlax with neutral center Snorlax, which was pretty fun. It was kind of cool to include a card that not a lot of lists were running. Um, and then yeah, top 64 Louisville with Iron Thorns, the cringe Iron Thorns deck, which was honestly a lot more fun than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, dude, it's a lot of fun. I don't think there's anything cringe about Iron Thorns unless you're throwing a Dragapult in there.
I'll agree with you there. Uh,
Well, nice. And
but
then
on
you
the
had a pretty good run at LAIC, cut a little bit short, but also pretty good.
Yeah, I think LAC was a cool experience. I'd never been to South America before, so it was cool just being able to like see more parts of the world. That's something I really like about playing Pokemon competitively is just being able to visit places I have never gone and maybe wouldn't have had a reason to go to necessarily
Mm-hmm.
otherwise, and just getting to experience like other cultures and places. And yeah, the run was pretty good. I lost my win in it to day two against James Cox, who was playing Reggie Drago, same 60 that got second place, Brent Tonneson. And it was kind of funny. It kind of really changed the way that I view the Snorlax into Drago matchup, which is I don't know. Like I think a lot of people before Worlds would have agreed that it was pretty favored for Snorlax, uh, unless they're playing something like Spiritomb, which was semi-popular at Worlds. But yeah, it's just like it's so good for Reggie Drago if they play it correctly. I think people just really learn the matchup. It's kind of funny how a meta can develop over time,
Mm-hmm.
not just with card changes, but with how people understand matchups.
Yeah, for sure. Well, a very successful first half of the season for you. Hoping the back half of the season stays strong, and I'm hoping I can get some wins on the board myself for the back half of the season. I was unable to make LASC sadly, even though I registered, and then Baltimore. I played Champao. I wanted to give it one last ride after Lucas Shin got top 16 with it at Worlds. I figured I'd give that list a try. And then I hit a few too many Charizards with Hero's Cape that just like ruined my day. and
Yeah,
uh, and then I played Terrapagos Dusknoir to Louisville. Started 4-0, so I was feeling really good. And then I hit 4 Charizards in a row, which I thought was a fine matchup without the Bouffalants, and it turned out it was not a fine matchup without the Bouffalants, and that ended my run in Louisville. But we're coming back strong for San Antonio, so I'm looking
yeah.
forward to
San
that.
Antonio is our tournament for sure. Really excited for this one.
Yeah, absolutely. But today we're going to talk about the future past this format. We're getting into Prismatic Evolutions pretty soon, which is sort of our mini set for the start of the year. And then we'll talk about the Champions League Osaka results that were in that Prismatic Evolutions format that we will be in after San Antonio. And then talking about the new Battle Partners set that was revealed at the Champions League, some of the cards out of there, though we won't have those until April in Atlanta, sadly. I think that is something that every competitive player probably is feeling pretty sad about the schedule of set releases in the past couple of years, and hopefully that's something that can be fixed in the near future. But yeah, that's where we're we're going to get the Battle Partner set will be in April, and we'll talk about the impact of that. So we're going to start today with Prismatic Evolutions, which seems to be a pretty cool set. I think this is the first time we're like, it seems like Japan usually for these special sets gets a special reverse holo pattern, and we've never gotten that special reverse holo pattern in the United States. But I think the first cool thing about it is we are getting like the Pokeball and Master Ball holos that they had in 151 and this set that we didn't get in our 151 set, but we are getting in this Eevee set.
Yeah, I think the extra holo patterns are really really cool. I opened a couple packs when I was in Japan for Worlds 2 seasons ago of the 151 set, and it's so much more fun to open those than the English versions.
Mm-hmm.
Just getting like a cool like Master Ball card of one of your favorite Pokemon is a ton of fun. And I believe the Umbreon, the Master Ball Umbreon, is like one of the most expensive cards in the set, which is just
Mm-hmm.
crazy. Like more expensive than some of like the art rares.
Yeah, that's pretty wild. I'll be curious to see how rare the Master Ball reverse holos are. I feel like a lot of competitive players are going to be after the Badoos of the Master Ball reverses. We'll see.
Yeah, people are going to be definitely trying to get those. I think competitively, there's not like a ton of like meta changing cards in the deck, but there are a couple cards that will definitely have a big impact for sure.
Yeah, I think scrolling down the list here, the first one that we hit on is the Badoo with the Itchy Pollen. Does 10 damage during your opponent's next turn. They can't play any item cards from their hand. No energy attack cost, free retreat, 30 HP on this Badoo, so very similar to our other baby Pokemon in format, but definitely the strongest one of them, right?
Oh, definitely. I think no question that this is a card that, at least at the moment, most people expect to probably change deck construction at the very least. It seems like it has the potential to be a meta defining card. Uh, time will tell like whether that's actually true, but it sure seems like it will have a big impact on the format.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, I do feel like there's a lot of decks that will, um, I guess you'll maybe take a look at your basics that evolve from your evolutions, and like if any of them does 30 for one, it's like that might be the optimal one now, despite any other like stats on the card, right? Just like if you have a, let's say, I don't think there is one, but a Ralts that does 30 for a Psychic and you're playing Gardevoir, like you might play that Ralts now. And similar for Charizard, if you have, there's the Charmanders that does 30 for one. That might be potentially Charmander you look to put in the deck. I think the other funny thing is the Elekid, the
Yeah,
baby Pokemon, does 30 for no energy as well. So like that might be a card that comes into decks like counter the Badoos, and just take that early prize. Could be enough to offset the item lock. I don't know.
yeah. I think something I thought was kind of cool being discussed about this. I think it was Jake Gearhart who I initially saw talking about this, but there's like a ton of Pokemon in the format that have like a counterattack style ability where if they get hit, it does like 30 damage to the active Pokemon. So like that's another answer that some decks could potentially include by just
Mm-hmm.
throwing one of those Pokemon in the active. So if they choose the item lock, the Badoo will get KO'd.
Yeah, for sure. I think another thing that a lot of people are thinking about is TM Evo decks are probably um, going to become much more common if you're not going to be able to rare candy into your Pokemon. TM Evo seems to be a good turn 2 going first strategy against Badoo, or just a turn 1 going second if you don't want to Badoo yourself. Like, for example, we'll see the Champions League Osaka results in a second, but not winning, but the Gardevoir deck that did the best didn't even play a Badoo. They just were like, if I'm going second, I want to TM Evo anyway, so I'm not going to be bothering item locking, which could indicate too that Badoo will have an impact on the format, but it might not be like as big as people had thought, because other people might just say, hey, I'd rather TM Evo and choose second than play Badoo in my deck.
Yeah, totally. It could be that Badoo like changes the meta, but not by being in decks. It's just changing the way that decks have to be
Mm-hmm.
built.
Mm-hmm.
Like I've seen like Dragapult could choose to play something like Lance, like which is like Pokemon search, not on an item, so they
Mm-hmm.
can like find their guys that way. Yeah, I think there's like a lot of interesting things to talk about, like in each archetype and like how they would deal with like prevalent item lock in the format.
Yeah, for sure. Um, yeah, so it'll be interesting to see how Badu uh, influenced the meta in the Champions League Osaka, but we'll get to that here in a second. As we go down the list, really, there's a lot of reprint cards in the set, which is probably good for just the prices of some competitive cards coming down. But there isn't a ton of competitive viability to a lot of these cards. I was probably the thing I was most surprised by was like none of the evolutions seem good at all, really. Like not competitively viable at all.
Yeah, that was a huge bummer. I think the most interesting one was like the Sylveon, not even like the EX, but just like the baby Sylveon that
Mm-hmm.
has the safeguard style ability. Seemed to be the most interesting one of all of like the evolutions. It's like a safeguard on
Mm-hmm.
a Pokemon that has like a decent attack too. So like it has a chance of like clearing out some of like the threats that would be able to KO it, like such as like Dracloaks or um Charmeleon, that those kinds of Pokemon.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Um, we do get a new Hoot Hoot for Noctowl decks. I do think Noctowl might be one of those cards that is really, really strong post rotation. It hasn't been seeing. It saw a lot of play like right when Stellar Crown came out, and then it like has sort of disappeared a lot. And I think that could be a really good post rotation card. We have a new Hoot Hoot coming out. What's funny though is it's just like way worse than the other Hoot Hoots we have.
Yeah,
It's got basically a useless ability, 2 retreat costs and 8 HP, so it can't be Buddy Poffin for. Um, so I don't know. That was kind of funny to me. They gave us like a
I
really
feel
thick
like
Hoot
it's
Hoot.
I that is such a big hoot. It's like it's kind of weird because like I feel like most like Pokemon that like evolve, uh, their HP is usually pretty like they have like 60 HP cards or like
Mm-hmm.
70 HP cards. They're like usually within 10 of each other, but I'm pretty sure there's like a 50 HP Hoot Hoot and now there's an 80 HP Hoot Hoot.
Yeah,
It's just like such a range. He's like so big and so small for no reason.
yeah. The only other like basic Pokemon that I can think of that are like evolving that are like Hoot Hoot sized Pokemon is like there's like an 80 HP Turtwig and then like an 80 HP Fuecoco, and that's like it. Otherwise, like if they have more than 70 as like a little Pokemon, they're like an Electabuzz or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, the new Hoot Hoot, funnily bad. But good to get a Noctowl reprint, get more of those because I think that'll be a good card. And then probably the next like most playable card in the set is the Regigigas for 4 colorless energy. Has 160 HP, and then for 4 colorless energy, it does 100 damage. And if your opponent's active Pokemon is a Terra Pokemon, this attack does 230 more damage. So 330 on a basic one prizer for 4 colorless energy, and we have a ton of ways to power this thing up.
Yeah, I think this is a very strong card, or has the potential to be a very strong card. Just being able to do 330 damage is just so powerful. It's like very similar to the Ancient Wisdom Regigigas in
Mm-hmm.
that it was just such a good answer for VMAXs. Like uh, it like was such an impactful card in the format that it was like played in. So something like this that could just like one shot a Charizard, one shot a Dragapult. It gives decks like Lugia and maybe like Chen Pao um, kind of like a cool option to deal with some of these
Mm-hmm.
Pokemon.
Yeah, for sure. Um, yeah, the only funny thing about it though is it does seem potentially. I don't think it's like Terras are fully gone, but from the cards we've seen from our next set, we haven't seen a Terra Pokemon yet. We've only seen like the partner Pokemon. So I mean, that's not to say we won't get any Terra Pokemon, but it seems like we're going to get significantly less Terra Pokemon at least. Like when V Stars came out, we still got like 1 or 2 V Maxes per set, but it was like way less and they were all bad. Um, so I wonder if Terras are gone. We still have very good Terras available to play, but it does seem like we might be getting less.
Yeah, something else that is a little bit funny too is that this actually also doesn't one shot every Terra in the format. Like there's some big guys that see no play that like with 340 that this doesn't
Yeah,
KO, but
and
it does
Pikachu.
KO all of the relevant ones.
Yes, for sure. Charizard comes to mind. Terrapagos. Ogre Pond. Those are kind of like the big three, I think.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Um, yeah, so I think like just off first thought, it's just like yeah, Lugia and Chien-Pao that can utilize it. Um, I'm not really sure if there's some other decks that like would really want to see play this guy, but I think mostly it's like a Lugia card. It seems like.
Yeah, for sure. The only other ways to probably power it up would be like uh, scramble switches, Thorntons on things that are already like powering themselves up, like Ogre Ponds, like the new Belly Bolt from the Journey Together set that we'll get to soon. Those sorts of things. I guess Thornton's gone, but scramble switch is still around to get the energy on this guy.
Yeah,
Um, but that is about it for competitive cards. We got a bunch of like trainer reprints. Um, but correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think any
I
of these
guess
are
there
very
was the
good. There's
new
the
A
Max
spec.
Rod. Yeah. New A spec, it's Max Rod. Choose up to 5 in any combination of Pokemon and basic energy cards from your discard pile and put them into your hand. Obviously, Night Stretcher is super strong. Having a 5 times Night Stretcher as one item card is super strong. There's probably decks that are interested in this, but with Night Stretcher being so good, just playing 4 Night Stretcher and having your A spec still be something else might kind of negate the usefulness of this. But if you have like a really Dusknoir heavy deck, maybe you're happy to see this. If you just need energy back, we still have Superior, right? Um, so it's good, but I don't know that it's like insane.
Yeah, I think it probably won't see very much play, but yeah, there could be a specific deck that like really likes to see something
Mm-hmm.
like this. So interesting card. Definitely not one of the worst ace specs, but it's pretty mid, I'd say.
For sure. But Prime Catch reprint, that's great. Just make all of these other ace specs cheaper. I'm a huge fan of Professor Elm, Professor's Research. Very excited for that. It did seem like a bunch of the Professor's Research arts were cut because I think they in the Japanese set they had one for every professor, and I don't think we
Yeah.
got all of those. So I'm sure some
Oh,
people
that's
are
so
sad
lame. I
about.
didn't realize that.
Yeah, I think some people are probably going to be sad about some of the ones that were cut. I think like Sada was cut, um, Birch was cut, like a few others were cut as well. Um, Professor Elm is probably my favorite, so I'm fine with
I'm
that.
a Gen 2 guy myself.
And then Treasure Tracker is another new ace spec. Search your deck for up to 5 Pokemon tool cards, reveal them, and put them in your hand. That just sounds like a meme deck card for sure. If there's like a
Yeah,
meme
I
deck
think the
that's like attacks for tool card damage, I don't know.
yeah, all I can think of is Rotom
Uh
V
huh.
Star, but that's not a good deck.
For sure. And then we have all the secret rares. We've got the normal looking Eerie, which is somehow almost creepier than like the normal Eerie. um, and then really cool artwork for some of these EXs. The Palafin is really cool. I think the Iron Hands very sick. Cool Sarah Edge. All the evolution ones are gonna be high on people's list to get. The Umbreon, of course. Uh,
The Goldengo, that's a classic. I think
Goldengo.
the uh I think the Palafin is it's pretty cool because it's like a crossover. They got the artist that wrote Fist of the North Star, which is
Mhm.
like old popular manga to do the art for this, which I think is like super cool. I want to see them do more like collaborations and crossovers
Yeah,
in the future like this.
yeah, for sure. Um, yeah, so really cool. I think the Ursaluna is probably another one that's way up there. That's a pretty crazy one.
Oh, that's really cool.
Um, and then Dragapult didn't get an alt art in its set that it came out with, in which people thought was weird. So now it does get a special art, which is kind of nice.
Yeah, so I mean, this is just like a lot like the Crown Zenith set we got before, and
Mm-hmm.
I think that was definitely a really fun set to open.
Yeah,
So looking forward to getting to crack some stuff open. It comes out what in like
comes
10
out on the
days?
17th, I believe. So, yeah, the question is, will you be able to get your hands on it? So there's been some controversy. Um, the set is sold out everywhere. It sounds like for pre-orders, and then it sounds like allocation has been severely limited for this set. And we saw this tweet earlier today where some shops are choosing not to sell prismatic evolutions at all for their own safety. And they posted, for our personal safety as well as the safety slash security of the store, we will not be selling the new Pokemon set. Um, Basically saying that collectors resellers have gotten way out of hand, and they don't want to be part of the problem, and they're trying to keep their employees safe, so they don't even want to bother with it. So that's pretty crazy.
Yeah, I during COVID, I remember Target stopped selling like Pokemon product because of like scalpers
Mm-hmm.
and resellers and stuff who were just getting like way out of hand. I think like I can't remember exactly what happened, but I think there was a Target in like Wisconsin or something where someone like got like so I can't remember exactly what happened, but I think someone got like really hurt, like an employee got really hurt, and that's just like Target across the nation, just like pulled
Yeah.
Pokemon from like their shelves.
Yeah.
Um, so and it's a huge bummer to see like a part of the community, acting this way over some cards. It's like it's unfortunate that the set's going to be more of a smaller like initial release,
Mm-hmm.
but like that's acting too crazy over some Pokemon cards.
Yeah, for sure. And it's also so funny because like that they're just gonna print to demand anyway. Like when
Yeah,
Shining Fates came out and Paldean Fates came out and like all those other special sets, like it was the same thing. Initial like crazy demand for it, and like 4 months later you would go to a Target and you'd see 20 ETBs on the shelf. So it's like
yeah,
people need to be
totally.
patient and understand that like I don't know, they're just Pokemon cards. It'll be all right. The good thing for competitive players is it should make the prices of singles pretty cheap on the cards you need from the set. So we'll
Yeah,
take
and
it.
that would be almost no cards from the set from a competitive standpoint.
That's
You get
that's
your
true.
like play set of Badoos, and you get your play set of uh Reggie Gigas and your A specs, and you've got that's basically my buy list, I think.
There you go. That's true. That's true. But moving on, we have the results from the Champions League Osaka, and a pretty surprising deck taking it down. Arcaludon Dialga taking first place in the first uh, 5,000 player tournament of what will be our Prismatic Evolutions format. And we can take a look at the deck list here. Pretty fairly vanilla list as far as I can tell. I mean, this is Scoop Up Cyclone was probably um, like one of the cards that we wouldn't have been seen play in Arcaludon. Like over here, people were probably playing things like Prime Catcher or something because they were going for like the heavy gust angle. But um, yeah, interesting to see this win when it hasn't really been doing anything over here. And it's not even really playing any of the new cards from Prismatic Evolution. It's not playing Badoo, but maybe just taking advantage of a format that's slowed down due to Badoo for a deck that doesn't really care as much about Badoo.
Yeah, I think something that kind of stands out to me about this deck list is it's got two copies of Jamming Tower, and I think a list that I have been seeing or have seen in the past were more like Pokestop focused.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the Jamming Tower is definitely interesting. I expect that they were expecting a lot of Gardevoir to show up at this tournament.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we do see that in some of the results. We did see I guess a Guardy. But the other deck that a lot of people I think were expecting was Dragapult as well, and we do see a lot of Dragapult here in the top 16. I'll move on to the second place deck here just quickly. It was Ancient Box, and a lot of Ancient Box over here was debating: do we play Ancient Drum? Do we play Secret Box? Do we play Prime Catcher? And it turned out the answer was Brilliant Blender.
Yeah,
Makes sense.
makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. Pretty standard list. And talking about how everyone was expecting Dragapult, a lot of decks were playing Monkey Dory with Dark Energy just to move that any damage counters back from Dragapult to your opponent.
Yeah, I think Ancient Box is maybe a little slept on right now. I think it's got some good matchups. It's a fairly consistent deck, I guess. Just kind of has a lower power level.
Mm-hmm.
But it's cool to see it do so well. Yeah, like Stomps Bolt. Great matchup into Guardy.
Yeah,
So yeah, cool deck. Cool to see it do well.
for sure. One interesting thing is I think the new Koraidon I would have expected to see more of in here, but going for the Great Tusk, maybe just eventually land collapse is a way to win a game. Or if you are not drawing super well, a good way to start a game and just sort of disrupt your opponent a little bit if you discard good resources from that land collapse.
Yeah.
Um, Third place then was Dragapult, and Dragapult had a pretty big presence at the tournament. They were playing two Badoos in here, as well as TM Evo, so kind of having both options there. And like you had mentioned before, starting to play that Lance supporter, which is sort of a supporter evolution search. If you do get item locked, you can still Lance and go find your Dracloaks.
Yeah, I think the Lance is cool. It was something that I was looking at when Dragapult first came out. Just like turn one, like playing Lance is, I guess. I mean, it's okay. It's not bad. You can get whatever dragons you don't have in your hand.
Yeah, especially with the draw power of the Dracloaks. Like Lance is finding you three Dracloaks, let's say, and it's also a draw three technically. Like it's getting you those Pokemon, and then they're gonna draw cards for you as well. So definitely doesn't seem bad. Klefki and Tubadoo is also kind of interesting. Klefki, I guess, slowing down some of those like basic decks like Raging Bolt, Miraidon that might have been a problem for Dragapult in the past. And then Badoo, obviously, another way to slow people down when you go second.
Yeah, I've restarted, but Alakazam only has one retreat cost, so not too tough to get into the Klefki. I think it's playing Tubadoo is kind of interesting, saying that like I really don't want to prize it, like it's like a crucial part of,
Mm-hmm.
of the strategy.
Yeah, for sure. Then in fourth place, we had a Lugia. Let's see here. Pretty standard Lugia list for like the current format. A couple of interesting things were they did play the new Regigigas, which makes sense because there's really no reason not to. They did still play a 2-2 Chinchino line, which a lot of people are thinking with the Regigigas, maybe you can cut that down to a 1-1. Over here, we've been playing the 4 boss, I think, pretty consistently. Um, and then Thornton in here, as well as 1 Carmine for their supporter counts, were a few other interesting things as well.
Yeah, I think something to note, like you were saying before. I think I didn't realize this before, but it looks like that's a new Minchino
Mm-hmm.
that does 30 for one. Is that correct?
I think it does 20 for 1.
Oh, it
Yeah.
does 20 for one.
Yeah.
Well, never mind then. Um,
Um,
I'm not sure why it's interesting to play that over the other one. I think the cleaning up attack, I guess, is more situational, and sometimes doing 20 turn one can be something.
for sure. For
Maybe
sure.
against like Raging Bolt or something.
Yeah, getting their bolts from 240 to 220 for sure. But cool to see. Obviously, Lugia is still doing well in this format. And again, a deck that probably doesn't care as much about Badoo's existence. If they are going to play slow, you just kind of like read the wind, maybe, and get your Archeops in the discard pile that way, draw into your V stars, and you can still Summoning Star and not too worried about item lock.
Yeah, and that Badoo will be going down for 2 prizes.
Yes. Then fifth place, pretty surprising deck. Cerulege hasn't been doing much over here, but they are playing the Badoo, so maybe just item locking turn 1 while you get everything set up and is good enough. They have the Palkia in here with the Greninja. So they can Moonlight Shuriken. They're not playing anything like Prime Catcher canceling Cologne to make sure that they can get that play off, but it is an option in the deck. I think the most surprising thing to me in here is no Briar. I just think that seems pretty obvious for a deck like this. No Briar and no Pheasantipity in this deck list for Cerulege.
Yeah, that is kind of interesting. Opting to play a second copy of Palkia V Star um, instead. I think that if looking at the list, I think that's an interesting include. I guess you can find the Palkia with Heavy Ball, but
Mm-hmm.
can't find the one prize Palkia V Star. I think it kind of reminds me of a deck like Goldengo that played this like Palkia package
Mm-hmm.
in it before, and I was never a huge fan of the Palkia and Goldengo. So I wonder if there are other ways to build the Cerulege deck that could be better.
Yeah, for sure. Um, But it is one of those decks that I mean, if you just turbo through your deck and you are suddenly hitting 280, 330, those big numbers by turn 2 or 3, um, as long as you can like boss every turn and take 2, like you're in a pretty good spot with Pal Pad, Secret Box, draw from Radiant Greninja, those sorts of things. You can, find those bosses orders. Um, I it is hard because the deck kind of has to play 18 energy. I feel like that is like the minimum energy you have to play to hit the numbers you need to hit. So it does limit the amount of cards you could play in here. Otherwise, I would imagine that Cerulege would be like a 4 Pokemon catcher sort of deck.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a deck that definitely has some potential. I think it's pretty linear. There's like not a lot of like crazy plays you can
Mm-hmm.
make. But it is consistent. It does what it's trying to do most of the time.
Yeah. And another instance of Monkey Dory in here preparing for those Dragapults. But moving on to a sixth place list was Miraidon. They did play the Minior, so that's interesting. Maybe preparing for some Snorlax. But other than that, it seems like a pretty standard Miraidon list.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. The Minior with the Latias kind of makes the Snorlax matchup like unlosable for Miraidon.
Yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, and then seventh place was another Arcaludon. Um, Pretty much the same as the other one, except it did play 4 Jamming Tower. Um,
And
and
this one doesn't
no
have the
Dialga.
Dialga, which I
Yeah,
think it seems crazy to me. I feel like Dialga is like the best part of that deck.
yeah, for sure. Um, but they are on that heavy gut strategy for boss, 3 Pokegears, yeah, and the Iron Bundle in here as well. 4 Jamming Tower seems unnecessary. I don't really know. There's not a ton of tools you're trying to shut off like that badly that you want to have 4 Jamming Tower, I guess.
That's a lot of jamming tower.
And then we had another Lugia. I think we can kind of stop going through every list. But I think the next craziest list was Dragapult Goldango. That one really stood out to me. And it's kind of funny. We saw like Iron Thorns Goldango sort of pop up. Or sorry, Iron Thorns Dragapult sort of pop up over here. So people are sort of experimenting with like, what can we pair with Dragapult to like do more things? And Goldango draws cards and it can hit big damage. And so it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, this is a wild deck list. They got a lot going on here. Um, but it's Goldango's a cool card. Like the card draw is good. Um, and kind of covers they kind of like cover what the other one isn't very good at. Like Dragapult can take multiple prize turns. And Goldengo can like one shot a big threat. So
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of cool. Interesting deck for it's definitely the most interesting deck in the top 16.
Yes, for sure. And you are drawing a lot of cards between recon directives and coin bonuses. Like you can't have a turn where you're just drawing 4 or 5 cards just off abilities, um, which you'll need to do because there are no draw supporters in this deck. You're really relying on that TM Evo.
I guess that's why that our Caldon player is playing four jamming
Or
towers. He was
jamming
ready for
tower.
this.
There it is. Yeah. Other than that, we did have one Guardy in the top 16. Um, they played Precious Trolley as their A spec. 3 Artisan. That's another thing that was sort of interesting. Only 2 Buddy Poffins. Then they were playing the 4 Call Bells. So pretty crazy Guardy list. And again, the thing that people sort of thought when they saw Badoo initially, I think most people are immediately like, Badoo goes in Guardy. Like it's the deck that sets up kind of slow, so you want to slow your opponent down. Um, but no Badoo in here. But they did play 4 Call Bell, which you can only use when you go second and only during your first turn, and you just search your deck for a supporter card. So really relying on finding that Arvin Precious Trolley TM Evo turn 1.
I mean, the deck can be pretty hard to stop when you get the TM Evo playoff, especially with the trolley. I think it's like kind of interesting about this list too is they were playing the Cresselia, which is something we haven't
Mm-hmm.
really seen too much recently. But maybe just expecting a lot of Dragapult to
Mm-hmm.
be uh, at this tournament.
Yeah, and not only 4 Call Bell, but 2 Poke Gears in here as well. So just like very, very, very much wanting to find that turn 1 Arvin.
Yeah, that's crazy. 8 outs to Arvin turn one and two more potential outs. That's just insane. That's a lot of it's a lot of finding Arvin. But I guess yeah, like if your whole thing is I just want to set up, makes
Yep.
sense.
And it seemed to work out for them. 15th out of 5,000. Pretty good.
Very
Or
good.
14th out of 5,000. And then we did have a Charizard in the top 16 as well. And this Charizard list is sort of evidence of what Badoo is doing to some of these evolution decks. No TM Evos in here. I don't think TM Evo really works well in Charizard just because of the limited amount of energy you play. You have to then play like energy searches or earthen vessels or something to like guarantee that TM Evo, and it just doesn't seem to work out in Charizard decks that are only playing 5 energy. But we do have 2 Charmeleons, 2 Pidgeotos, and a Grand Tree in here. So really focused on those middle stage evolutions to get into play, relying less on the rare candies with Badoo in the format.
Yeah, just another way to get around that item lock. I think we were trying Grand Tree in some decks, when it first came out,
Mm-hmm.
Stellar Crown, and we were like, man, like this feels so bad to play right now because all these decks are playing
Yeah.
Dusknoir. Um, and so you're kind of just giving your opponent an A spec too. But it seems like there's a lot less Dusknoir
Mm-hmm.
uh, going on right now, so maybe it's a little bit easier to play in Zard.
Yeah, for sure. I think when Grancher initially came out, we had Terapagos Dusknoir, we had Palkia Dusknoir, we had Charizard playing Dusknoir, and you're like, man, a ton of my matchups, I play Grand Tree down, and I've just given my opponent a free Dusknoir with my own ace spec.
Yeah, it feels bad.
But very cool results to see, and we will see how our results line up to these when we get to London. That'll be the first major event with Prismatic Evolutions. We do have an SPE in Puerto Rico that I'm hoping to go to. That will be legal, but that'll be a much smaller tournament. I don't think those results will be super indicative of the Prismatic Evolutions format. We'll really have to wait for London to see the full impact. But moving on, we have battle partners revealed. This will be our Journey Together set. This is trainer Pokemon returning. We saw some of these cards revealed at Worlds this year in Honolulu, but more of them getting revealed now. And they're pretty cool. I will say, I don't want to put a damper on it immediately. I'm a little underwhelmed, a little bit. That doesn't mean they're bad, but maybe I was expecting a little bit more. But they're cool. It's just like when you compare them to things like Charizard right now, you're like, ooh, do you beat Charizard? Like, I don't know. I don't know if you beat the things we already have. So we'll go through the list here. We'll start by trainer. It's not ordered by trainer here, but we'll start by trainer because they all are kind of a package deal. So I'm going to actually scroll down to what we got revealed at Worlds. For N, we had the N's Zoroark with the trade ability, discard a card from your hand and draw 2 cards. And it's got the Night Joker attack for 2 dark energies. Choose one of your benched N's Pokemon's attacks and use it as this attack. So we had already seen this at Worlds, but what we got revealed was the funniest trainer card maybe printed in a while. Ends PP up, which is kind of how you're going to get those 2 dark energy on your Zoroark. It's just attach a basic energy card from your discard pile to one of your benched Ends Pokemon. This can go to any benched Ends Pokemon. Doesn't have to be a dark energy, so it's not a dark patch, but with dark patch rotating, it's kind of the way we're going to get those dark energies on our Zoroark and any other energy we need to on our other Ends Pokemon. So then the question remains, what do we attack with? We have the Ends Reshiram, which was also revealed at Worlds, that has sort of a revenge attack. Well, not a revenge attack, the Rage attack, where it does 20 damage for each damage counter on this Pokemon, which it can be really strong. Zoroark has 280 HP, but there's a lot of things in Standard that are just one-shotting you, aren't there?
Yeah, for sure. I think like when people first saw these 2 cards, like they're like, well, we'll probably get other attackers. Like the Reshiram like is okay in some scenarios, but really a card like Zoroark relies on there being like something that can just be your go-to, like how Mew had Genesect. Um, and so yeah, when I first saw this card revealed, I was like super excited. Like we didn't know about the ends PP up yet. Um, but it's exactly the kind of support that that Enzorark's gonna want. And additionally, like something that could be kind of awkward with cards like Metal Saucer and Dark Patch in the past is it has to go on a bench Pokemon. But since Zoroark's a dark Pokemon, it can just utilize the Petron EX to bring into the active, so there shouldn't ever really be too much issues
Mm-hmm.
powering up an Enzorark if you're as long as you're able to find one of the PP ups.
Yeah, for sure. Then the Virtuous Flame doing 170. That is like pretty good damage output, I guess. It's just like not quite there. Like, yeah, you're one-shotting things that are weak to dark, but there's not a lot weak to dark right now besides Guardy EX, and that's losing Curlia. So we don't have a ton of like amazing damage output. I guess you can hit 210 with Mochi and Petrant. Maybe that's something with the Virtuous Flame. So there are options, but we did get another attacker revealed for Zoroark, and it is the Enstar Manitan, which is pretty cool. It has the backdraft attack for double colorless. Does 30 damage for each basic energy in your opponent's discard pile. Could be okay against something like a Raging Bolt deck. They play 10-ish energy, so if the majority of those are in the discard, maybe you're hitting 240 on them. But really, that just seems like a way to make sure Saraledge never sees play. I guess.
Yeah. I think something that is kind of a bummer and might hold things back is that the Darumaka has 80 HP. That's like kind of unfortunate. So it won't be Buddy Poffin searchable. But the Darmanitan, I think, I was underwhelmed at first when I first read it, but then when I went back and thought about it a little bit more, I'm a little bit higher on the card than I was at initial reading, where like this is something like first of all, it can attack itself with ends PP up and just using backdraft. So you have like a single prize option against some decks, like you said, against Saraledge and Raging Bolt, or like something like Goldengo. Ends Darmanitan hits that for weakness, so like that's a pretty easy one prizer in a matchup like that. And then also its second attack, like you're able to use like something like a reversal energy possibly to just power this up and attack with.
Yeah.
So you have some options, I suppose.
Yeah, so the second attack, the Darmanitan Cannon does 90 damage, discard all energy from this Pokemon, and you do 90 to the bench. Manaphy is rotating, so bench damage gets even stronger post-rotation. And to be honest with you, since Shining Arcana Guardy rotated, I completely forgot reversal energy existed.
Oh, yeah.
But
that has not seen play in a minute.
Yes, but that does seem very good on the Enstar Manitan.
Yeah, I think something to note about that attack is it's worse than Greninja's attack since you have to hit the active, but still a very strong attack, and a single prizer that can take two prizes in some matchups is definitely something that's a strong tool for a deck to have.
Yeah, for sure. And again, we don't know how Ends decks will be built, but let's say you really want to lean into like reversal energy. We do still have things like Dusknoir to like put ourselves behind in prize cards to turn on those reversal energies as well. So that with the draw from trade and whatever other support we get, that could be an option as well.
Yeah, totally.
So those are the Ends Pokemon. I think that was all of the Ends Pokemon. Oh, there's
I think the Sigilyph.
There's the Ends Sigilyph. It has victory symbol for Psychic Colorless. If you use this attack when you have one prize card remaining, you win the game. I mean, I doubt that'll see much play, but like if there's ever a format where there's like big tanky Pokemon, like tank and heal decks become like a bigger thing, I guess maybe Zoroark could play this as a way to just take that final prize card if there's certain decks out there that are difficult to KO.
Yeah, definitely a really situational card. Probably not that good, but something to keep in the back of your mind.
Yeah, so that was all the Ends Pokemon. So we'll go to Iono next. Iono got a Belly Bolt EX with the Electric Streamer ability. As often as you like during your turn, you may attach a basic lightning card from your hand to one of your Iono's Pokemon. So basically Rain Dance for lightning Pokemon, but they all have to be Iono's Pokemon. And then it has the Thunderous Bolt attack that does 230 damage.
Yeah, and I could be wrong, but I don't recall there being a Rain Dance style ability on something that wasn't a stage 2.
It's always had limitations because like Cherim had it for grass Pokemon that didn't have a rule box or something, but it's always had pretty serious limitations.
There was that Frostmoth too. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, I don't know. I think again, this is something that we'll have to see, like what the rest of Iono's Pokemon are before we can, you know, make a ton of assumptions. It got an interesting attacker that we'll go over shortly, but
Mhm.
um, I think it's interesting. I'm intrigued by the Iono card. I think.
Yes, for sure. And then it's got some consistency built in. It's got Iono's Kilowatt Rule that has Flash Draw. You must discard a basic lightning energy from this Pokemon in order to use this ability. Once during your turn, you may draw cards until you have 6 cards in your hand. So it's got the draw ability, and then Mach Bolt for a god awful energy cost, but doesn't really matter in a Belly Bolt deck because you can just attach as much energy as you want. Does KO Mimikyu, so like you have a way through sort of some of the walls in the format.
Yeah, I think this is a really strong ability. We have something similar like this with the Revavroom
Mm-hmm.
that's in format currently, but the Revavroom has like a way bigger retreat cost. Um, and I don't know. I think the Kilowattrel is like pretty good.
Yeah. And then the final, yes, the final Iono card. It's not Iono specific, but it's obviously meant to be played with the Iono deck. It's the Levincia Stadium. Once during each player's turn, that player may put up to 2 basic Lightning Energy cards from their discard pile into their hand. That card is great for Iono, but it seems even better for Goldengo.
Yeah, that's a broken card, honestly. Like there's a ton of like we lose Pokestop, so decks like Raging Bull, decks like
Mm-hmm.
Goldengo, they would both love something like this to like uh get energy cards to discard later. Or I guess we lose Greninja, but
Yeah.
yeah, something like this works really well with the Kilowattrel.
The other thing about Belly Bolt, I just thought about this now. Like, Ogerpon has been the partner of Raging Bolt, but uh, Belly Bolt could be the new Raging Bolt partner. You just attach the fighting energy for turn and then energy switch lightning onto the Raging Bolt, and you have the draw with the Kilowattrel. Could be a new way to play it.
Yeah, totally. That's yeah, interesting. I think this is like in terms of power level, this is like a really like
Mm-hmm.
powerful stadium. I think. So it's like Training Court was like a busted
Mm-hmm.
stadium. I think Training Court was really
Yeah,
good, and that only got one energy, and this gets two.
yeah, for sure. Um, so that is the Iono's Pokemon that we've seen so far. So we'll take a look at Lily's Pokemon, and then there's more revealed that we'll go over. So first we have the Lily's Clefairy that we saw at Worlds. The weakness of each of your opponent's Dragon Pokemon play is now Psychic. And then the Full Moon Rondo. This attack does 20 more damage for each bench Pokemon, both yours and your opponent's, for Psychic and Colorless. So we've had this attack a lot before. This is Raikou V, Entei V, Suicune V's attack. Which is interesting. Um, but obviously, you can hit dragons for weakness. Probably the only relevant dragon, maybe Raging Bolt and then Dragapult, are probably the two relevant dragons that you're going to be hitting for weakness. 190 HP isn't the best. You're sort of like a glass cannon. But we do have things like Area Zero in the format to build up your bench more, so you can do more damage with the Full Moon Rondo. So kind of an interesting card.
Yeah, if it was in the format right now, it would see a ton of play.
It would see a ton of play. Coming in just in time for Reggie Drago to be gone.
Yeah,
Um, we do have some good setup from Lily's Pokemon as well. They have the Lily's Comfy, the Flower Call. Search your deck for any number of basic Lily's Pokemon and put them onto your bench. So if you put down, let's just say, a Terapagos and then an Area Zero and then go with Lily's Comfy, you can fill the rest of your bench all the way with Lily's Pokemon.
yeah, that's an extremely powerful setup attack. So again, like we've only seen two Lily's Pokemon so far, but if there's some good ones, it's got a ton of great support
Mm-hmm.
already.
And the Lily's Comfy also one shots a Badoo. So that's
There you
interesting.
go. Yeah, can't get trapped either.
Yep. Pretty cool. And then the final Lily's support is probably the thing that makes the deck even more appealing is the Lily's Pearl. If this card is attached to a Lily's Pokemon and it's knocked out by damage from an opponent's attack, your opponent takes one fewer prize card. So I don't think we've ever seen, or we haven't seen one of these in a long time that goes on a rule box that doesn't decrease their HP. So that seems pretty cool.
Yeah, this is an extremely like powerful card. You can play four of them. It's not like an ace spec or
Mm-hmm.
anything.
And you can still play
Um,
Legacy Energy.
you can still play Legacy Energy. So like, you know, in games, you could make your opponent have to take like 8, 9 knockouts to win the game.
Yeah, that's pretty wild. We'll see if Lily gets any more support. I think We'll see. We'll go to the next tab soon, but I don't think we've seen any other Lily's Pokemon yet besides the Clefairy and the Comfy. But there's got to be at least one or two more, right?
Yeah, and Lost Vacuum will be gone by the time
Mm-hmm.
these cards come out. So really, the only like tool disruption you're gonna have is something like Jamming Tower.
Yeah, for sure. Um, yeah. So moving on, we did have more cards revealed from the set. We got this Meowscarada. Says once during your turn, you may use this ability if this Pokemon's not on the bench. Switch it with your active Pokemon. So sort of like an anti-trapping card. And then Rising Bloom has 90 plus 90 more damage if your opponent's active Pokemon is a Pokemon EX. Probably not that good, but there's another Meowscarada.
Yeah. We lose double turbo energy, so maybe a little bit awkward
Mm-hmm.
attacking with the Meowscarada deck.
For sure. But we did get Iono's Voltorb, another Iono's Pokemon revealed. For 2 colorless energy, it has Chain Bolt and it does 20 damage for each lightning energy on attached to all of your Iono's Pokemon. So the Belly Bolt floods all the energy into play, and then Iono's Voltorb can take some bigger knockouts. Like 20 plus is I mean, you have to have 11 energy in play to knock out a Raging Bolt. So that is a lot of energy. So it depends on how many energy the deck's going to be able to play. Obviously, you have the Stadium to get them back. You have the Kilowatt roll discarding them. So there's not a ton of downside on the deck to playing a ton of energy, but the Chain Bolt does need a lot of energy in play to hit like meaningful numbers.
Yeah, it could be hard to take those big knockouts turn two. So
It
that's
is.
something like before Goldengo got Energy Search Pro, that was like one of the most difficult parts of the deck was just getting enough energy to take these big
Mhm.
KOs, and that had a 50x multiplier. This has a 20 multiplier, and so it could be tough to get those big numbers early
Yeah,
without seeing more support.
for sure. Then the Electrode, I think, probably won't really see play. It's got the Heart Pounding Bomb. This Pokemon does 100 damage to itself. Then you flip a coin of heads, your opponent's active Pokemon is knocked out. That's pretty risky. Uh, I guess you can knock out anything for 2 lightning, though, if you
Yeah,
are good at flipping those heads.
yeah, terrible card, but it does give you, sometimes it gives you an out to winning a game that you otherwise would have no ability to win,
Yeah.
I guess.
Then we did get the art rare for Ionis Kilowattrel, which is kind of cool. Um, and let's see. I didn't skip anything. We did get a non-trainer card, Mamoswine, which initially, before it got translated, it was almost cool, and then once it was fully translated, it wasn't. It's got the Mammoth Carry ability that says once during your turn, you may search your deck for a Pokemon, reveal it, and put it into your hand, then shuffle your deck. And then, which is a cool ability. And then Rumbling March does 180, and then 40 more damage for each stage 2 Pokemon on your bench. If this was just for every evolution Pokemon on your bench and not stage 2, this might be good enough, despite fighting energy being tough to accelerate into play and grass being a bad weakness. Like, you could do a lot of damage with Mamoswine, but having it be stage 2 Pokemon, I think just like absolutely negates any ability of this card to be good.
Yeah, and it's so sad too because this card it had a lot of the pieces it needed to be really good. Like the Swinub has like the busted call for family attack.
Yep,
You
yep.
get to get two. Like that's crazy.
Yeah, it was
Had
almost
like
there.
really good synergy with like getting like Pidgeotto X out into play.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, I think it's like so interesting and it's so close, but it seems like it's just not quite going to be enough. You
Yeah.
have cards like the Reversal Luxray or the Kling Clang that puts
Mm-hmm.
itself into play if your opponent has a stage two out, but that's like so situational. The meta would have to be very specific for a deck like this to be good, I think.
Yeah, for sure. Um, Next we have hops cards. These were all revealed. I'm just gonna skip over those quick. We'll end with those. We had 2 other random cards revealed from the set, so I just want to go over those quick, and then we'll talk about hop because that seems to be the one people are most excited about at this point. So we did get a new Banette. It's got the cursed speech attack. Your opponent shuffles 3 cards from their hand into their deck, and that's immediately just funny because Zerosic exists, where you make your
Yeah.
opponent discard their hand down to 3. Cursed speech gives them a 0-card hand. Could be some sort of handlock deck, potentially. Um, I have some doubts, but like giving your opponent a 0-card hand is pretty crazy.
Yeah, it's just like if you can answer the question of then what,
Yeah.
you got yourself a great deck on your hands. But until that question's answered, just kind of a
Yeah.
funny card, I think.
I'm not the most creative person of deck building, but there is a Gothitelle that's a stage 2
Yeah,
that does control your opponent's top deck. You look at the top 2 cards of your opponent's deck and you can put them back in any order. So you can sort of control your opponent's top deck. Um, but like you said, the question is like, then what? Like, we're not winning. Like, are we just then attacking? Are we setting up Dust Noires and just like going crazy after them? Um, I don't know, but funny to give your opponent a 0 card hand.
yeah, definitely.
And then we got the Dunsparce EX. We got a new Dunsparce that has the Trading Places attack. You just switch this Pokemon with one of your bench Pokemon. 70 HP. And then the Dunsparce EX has the Adversity Tail for this attack does 60 damage for each of your opponent's Pokemon EX in play. That's pretty interesting against certain decks. Like, you think about the Raging Bolts and those sorts of things, like, you're pretty quickly one-shotting them. I guess it just remains to be seen how EX heavy the meta is, but that is a very good attack for just 1 energy. If there's 4 or 5 EX Pokemon in play, you're doing 240, 300 damage. That's not bad. And then the Drill Break attack for 150 damage, and it has Shred. So, seems interesting. We already have the cool Dunsparce that also draws cards.
Yeah, I think I'm interested in this card. I like the first attack is like it's pretty good. Usually, like attacks like this cost more than like 1 energy. So having it on a
Mm-hmm.
stage 1 energy uh, attack cost, that's like not bad at all. Again, like it rely on you like having playing in like a specific meta where like Raging Bolt is really popular and decks with a lot of EX is
Mm-hmm.
really popular. But I think it's a cool card for sure. And like you said, like the cool to
Yeah.
Dunsparce, like that card is that's a great draw support Pokemon. It's really cool.
Yeah, for sure. So cool to get more Pokemon that are like close to good. It just kind of needs the right format. But then yeah, we'll move on to Hop's Pokemon. People are super excited about this. Hop got just like a crazy amount of support. So we have a Hop's Zacian EX. It has the close cleave attack for 1 colorless energy, does 30 damage, and then 30 damage to one of your opponent's bench Pokemon. In this format, that wouldn't be that interesting, but the fact that Manaphy rotates means that you're probably already always getting that 30 extra damage. So that's a little bit better. Then it has the Brave Slash for Metal, 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 colorless, 240. And during your next turn, this Pokemon can't use Brave Slash, but it can use Close Cleave again. So, I mean, immediately this isn't interesting when you read it, but when you look at all of the support it gets, it becomes a little more interesting. The Hop Snorlax has an ability where your Hop's Pokemon do 30 more damage to your opponent's active Pokemon. So now with the Snorlax in play, your Close Cleave's doing 60 and 30 to the bench. It got Hop's Choice Band, where if it's attached to a Hop's Pokemon, their attacks cost 1 colorless energy less and do 30 more damage. So now your Zacian with a Snorlax and a Choice Band is doing 90 active, 30 to the bench for no energy. And then it also got the Post-Wick Stadium, where it says the attack of Hop's Pokemon do 30 more damage to your opponent's active Pokemon. So with all those in play, your Zacian is doing 120 damage to the active, 30 to the bench for no energy. Pretty interesting. Is it enough?
Yeah, it's a good question. Like it's it's fun to speculate on all these cards like when they first get revealed, but it's like so much of it is contingent on like what other cards are coming out.
Mm-hmm.
We what the meta looks like, but that's a lot of support for Hops Pokemon. So far from what we've seen, it appears that the Hops Pokemon are the best from what we've seen, but we've also seen the most of the Hop
Yeah, I was
archetypes.
gonna say we've seen 3 Ends Pokemon, like 2 Lily's Pokemon, and like 3 or 4 Ionos Pokemon. So they revealed like everything for Hop, and I have to assume there's more Ends Pokemon and Lily's Pokemon than what we've seen. But the Hops Cramorant as well, just as we're talking about Hop support, Fickle Spit for 1 colorless, 120. But if your opponent doesn't have exactly 3 or 4 prize cards remaining, this attack does nothing. Reminds you of an Ultra Beast. It's dependent on prize cards that your opponent has remaining. But with all the support, you're doing 150 with the Snorlax in play, 180 with Post-Wick in play, 210 if you've got the Choice Band on it. So pretty strong attack on a Cramorant for 1 to 0 energy for a 1 prizer. And then they've also got the double where when it evolves, you can essentially boss up one of your opponent's benched Pokemon and put it in the active spot. So Lycanroc, Umbreon VMAX vibes from the double. So just a lot of support. It just is kind of like, is it enough? I mean, if you do 120 and 30 to the bench against Raging Bolt, they just come back and blow up your Zacian. You know what I mean? Like, it just
Yeah,
really
yeah,
depends on what the meta looks like.
totally.
Um, and then there's two other cards we didn't talk about just quickly. Brock Scouting, cool supporter card. I like when these support cards have like choose multiple things. So it says choose one, search your deck for up to 2 basic Pokemon and then put them into your hand, or search your deck for an evolution Pokemon and put it into your hand. Again, with all the other supporters and stuff that we have in the game right now, probably not very good, but if we get to a future where Research and Iono are gone and we don't have as much draw and the game is slowing down, we always say that Pokemon never ends up doing that. But like in that world, this would probably be a good supporter.
Yeah, and I guess we don't have a ton of ways to put like basic Pokemon into our hand. It's basically just like stuff like Ultra Ball.
Mm-hmm.
So if there's if there's like basic Pokemon that have abilities when they're played to the bench,
Mm-hmm.
something like Brock Scouting could be interesting, I guess. But in terms of the supporters we have right now, it's definitely a little bit underwhelming in the current format.
Yeah. And then we have the exchange ticket, which caused a little bit of a stir on Twitter, I think. After counting your prize cards, shuffle them, put them on the bottom of your deck, then take that many cards from the top of your deck and put them face down as your prize cards. So interesting card for control decks, probably, because you don't have ways to really like access your prize cards if you prize like key pieces. That's one thing. There's also interesting things you can do with like the Chansey and other things to just like manipulate your prize cards. So interesting card. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I think something like this is really, really, really cool because we're gonna be losing Heavy Ball. And so the only other card we have in format to interact with your prizes is that will stay in format is Daisy's Help, which is a pretty bad supporter.
Mm-hmm.
So I think this is pretty cool because sometimes you need your last boss out of your prizes to like
Yep.
win the game, and so this will allow you to do something like that, and you have some control over it because I think there was like a similar card in the past. I can't remember what it was called, but you like shuffled your deck so you
Yeah.
could potentially reprise your prize, whatever you had prized before. But
Yeah.
this, like, you're guaranteed putting new cards in your
Yep.
prizes.
We also have like the Academy at night, so you can kind of manipulate some of the cards that go back into your prizes, like by putting a card to the top of your deck from your hand with Academy at night and those sorts of things.
Yeah, totally. So I think I'm sure this will see at least some play.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's pretty strong. And then there's like a kind of a funny interaction where like if you were to play this with the Pokemon Go or the 151 Chansey,
Mm-hmm.
that is a way you could like Cypher Maniacs, 2 Chanseys at the top of your deck, put them in your prizes. Kind
Yep.
of funny.
Yep. Pretty funny. So yeah, interesting. Um,
I
so I
think
think.
there was one more like reveal, I believe.
Oh,
There
was
was
there?
like a
Okay.
yeah. It
Let
was
me see here. Oh, the Metagross. Was that it?
I guess 2 more because there's a Lycanroc and a Spike Energy too that got
Oh,
revealed.
that's right. Okay, so we do have the Metagross, and it's really bad, so we don't need to spend that much time on it. But for Psychic, it does 130, and if Beldum and Matang are on your bench, it does 150 more. 280 is a good number. Your opponent's Zoroark EX is really sad because they can't use Reshiram to do more damage because you just one-shot him. But yeah, probably not very good. But the Lycanroc, there it is. I missed it. Yeah, so this one is cool. It has the Entangling Spikes ability. When you play this card from your hand to evolve one of your Pokemon during your turn, you may attach up to 2 Spike Energy from your discard pile to this Pokemon. And Spike Energy says if this card is attached to the Pokemon in the active spot and they're damaged by an attack, you put 2 damage counters on the attacking Pokemon, and that's for each Spike Energy attached. So, if you have 3 Spike Energy attached, your opponent attacks into you. They're doing 60 damage back to them. And then the Lycanroc has the Grabbing Fangs attack that does, for 3 colorless energy, 40 plus damage, and it does 40 more damage for each damage counter on your opponent's active Pokemon. So, interesting synergy there, but again, just the sort of formats that we've been having, it seems like something like this might not be quite strong enough.
actually think that so it's cool that it can like power itself up. I think something that's kind of interesting though is it can blow up anything if you like Dusknoir or something. So
Yeah.
that's kind of like an interesting thing. Um, and then like if they KO it, they take 60 back, maybe more if you have like a tool on
Yeah.
it.
That's true. We
And
also
then
have
you
like
set up the next one.
the Uxie in format
Yeah,
for like one psychic energy just puts 2 damage counters on each of your opponent's Pokemon. So you could like early game just like set up a bunch of damage and then like try to sweep with Lichen Rocks.
yeah, we got
Um,
like the Frost last two that could
mhm.
potentially set up some more damage.
Yeah.
So I think this card is cool. I don't know if it's good enough, but it's definitely something I'm going to be looking at once we see the whole
Yes.
set.
I think it's one of those cards where you read it and you go, I think if we lived in a format where this card could be good, that would be a really good format.
I totally agree with you. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a cool ability, cool attack. I like this energy.
Yep, for sure. But that's about all we have to share with you for a day. About an hour long, or a little over an hour long for our first podcast back. Hopefully, we'll be able to get the face cams going for next time, get Austin back. Hopefully, you guys have been enjoying the content I've been uploading on the channel. I mostly got TCG Pocket obsessed, but we're still into the real TCG. We've been in a long format for the IRL TCG. So there's not a ton of exciting stuff I feel like to post for that, but we'll try to get more meta discussions going before tournaments, maybe some tournament vlogs, those sorts of thing. But I'm also going to keep the Pocket content going because I do love Pocket.
Yeah, it was good to be back and into the swing of things. A lot of tournaments coming up. A lot of big changes coming to the TCG in the next
Mm-hmm.
couple of months. So yeah, looking forward to covering some of it.
Yeah, well, thank you guys for tuning in today, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you guys in the next episode.